Hi, this is Crystal K, and this is my video response for Activity 2 from Module 4. And I know for myself, I don't necessarily fall into these categories specifically as they describe in this chapter. But as a teacher, especially when I'm talking to other teachers, I definitely fall into categories 2 and 3 in other ways. So I'll start by describing category 2. I know I definitely fall into this one. I don't necessarily send out solutions saying you should do something like this as it says. I have it here. Sometimes it says you ought to or you should. If you don't start monitoring or you should. I know I say if a teacher is having trouble with one of my resource, so I'm a resource teacher, so I know if a gen ed teacher is having trouble with one of my resource students in their gen ed class, a behavior problem, I say, well, I don't see that behavior because I use a behavior chart, or I use, a reinforcement system, I use a treasure box, or things like that. So it's kind of well, maybe you should, implying that maybe you should be using that. So I don't necessarily use those words, but I know that in a sense I'm implying those words. So it can be a roadblock of communication. And I know I do it in other ways as well. If they're not seeing adequate growth, in academics or in reading, reading fluency, oh, well, in the resource room, I use whisper phones for reading fluency with my students. Maybe you should use them too with your special ed students because it really, I see the progress with my students. And then I know I fall into category 3 with avoiding others' concerns, because I feel a lot of times, as teachers, especially when it comes to general education teachers, bringing their concerns of their SPED kids to me when I'm their special education teacher, they kind of want me to address it immediately. And sometimes I blow it off like it's no big deal because I have so many other things to do. Sometimes, well, a lot of times, their concern's not always the top of my list. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time, it can seem like I'm not all that concerned about it, when it's not the case. I am concerned about it, but it's not an immediate concern. It's not concern number 1. And I know that can be off-putting and it can affect future communication. And I should be more cognitive of the way I communicate those concerns to the teachers, to the general education teachers in the future. So that was a very enjoyable activity, very self-correcting and self-reflective of how I can improve my future communication with general education teachers next year. So thanks. Bye.